TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time for Tea Time Wagers with Brady Kannon at Pinehurst2. The U.S. Open, the third major of the PGA 2024 season. A lot to talk about. As we were talking backstage, I will do my best, I'm not promising, to go over what happened last week at Jack's place, and then, of course, get us set up for the third major where Mr. Scheffler, right now, I think plus 300, everyone's scrambling for second, thirds, and fourths, but we got a big show here. So buckle up, grab yourself a nice cold one, and relax. Get your notepads, pens, questions if you got them. We're going to be here for a while. So first and foremost, a shout out to our proud sponsor and partnership. Of course, that's WagerWire. If you have not downloaded the app, please head on over to Google Play, download it. It's free. And then from there, scroll to the bottom. You'll see a lot of sports books that are available in your state. Start downloading them. Take advantage of the props, the promos, the match plays, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Start to window shop. Start to make this more of an investment versus entertainment. And that's where I come in. And, of course, Travis, Zach, and the rest of this team and community will take good care of you. And if you'd like to join the WagerWire team, send an email to affiliate at wagerwire.com, and we will do the rest from there. So without further ado, the true star of this show, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, good to be with you again. And it seems like it wasn't that long ago. We were here on eve of another major, and here we are again. I just love this new PGA Tour schedule that they went to in 2019, moving the PGA to May. You know, obviously, it really kind of starts in March with the Players' Championship. Then you have the Masters in April, the PGA in May. Here we are, Father's Day weekend for the U.S. Open. You know, and then you've got the signature events in between. So, you know, the meat of the golf season for sure. We've talked about this too. Kind of started with the Wells Fargo. You rolled into the PGA. A couple of classics with Colonial and the Canadian Open, the Memorial, Jack's Place. What a beauty that was. Always a big boy golf tournament. And now the National Championship. And we got a signature event next week. So good stuff right now in the world of golf. You know, I always say in April, my favorite major is the Masters. If you ask me the same question in July, I'll say the British Open. But this one feels pretty special this week. Pinehurst, the kind of run that Scotty Scheffler's on. Good stuff, man. I'm really excited.
Yes. Before we dive into that, because I have a million questions before we get to our, of course, our meat and potatoes of this show. Going back to last week, Jack's Place Memorial, we had talked last week. A big spot in my heart. My dad introduced me to golf. His favorite golfer was Jack, of course, until Tiger came along. I remember that day when Jack shocked the world and won the Masters. I was at a wedding, and the reception was at the Brockton Country Club golf course. And my dad, an avid golfer, a scratch golfer, we're sitting and watching this, and we're looking like we couldn't believe what is Jack doing here? Is he gonna do the charge? You know,
yes,
makes
sir.
the putt, and yes. What a tournament he puts on. I love the golfers. It's like, wow, Jack, tough course you got here, you know. We talked backstage about once they've completed the 18, Jack waiting for him right there, shaking their hands. Talk about last weekend's tournament. What did you see? Just a great event.
Yeah, one of my absolute favorites, man. I love the LA Open. They now call it the Genesis Invitational. I still like to call it the LA Open. Riviera Country Club, a classic. Torrey Pines, I love. The Memorial, right there with them all, as one of my favorites year in and year out. And part of that is because of that tradition. Jack Nicklaus there behind the 18th green. And you look at those players, they're so thankful when they come off, and what a great tournament. Thank you, Mr. Nicklaus. Thank you, Jack, whatever. They're so respectful. Yeah, it's a great scene. And you talk about how difficult it was. Boy, we saw how difficult it was. And the way it panned out in the end, it was the second most difficult tournament of the entire season so far, second only to the Masters. So absolutely a serious test of golf. And what a way to kind of get these guys geared up for what might turn out to be the most difficult test of the year here at Pinehurst #2 this week.
Brian's here. He said, hello, boys. Great week. Can our guy Fleetwood finally break through? Well, I will eventually get to that. But I will say this, Brian, and I'll let Brady talk about Mr. Fleetwood. He seems like one of those hot names on social media right now, and we know how we feel when we start to hear a name too much. But I think he's in perfect form, and horses for courses. I'm not going to say he's secretariat here, but he seems, especially with the value at his odds right now, like a pretty good investment this week.
Yeah, and I'm 100% on board with you there, Jeff. I hate to see it when somebody gets too popular. Colin Morikawa, I think, is a very popular play this week. I think Koepka is always popular when it comes to major championships. I think Cam Smith is popular, Victor Hovland. Thankfully, I haven't seen that overwhelming support for Fleetwood, which I like to be, on the side of somebody that's not overwhelmingly popular, as you allude to. But I'll tell you what, I think we have a little bit of a different phenomenon this week where you have Scotty as a prohibitive favorite, okay? And a lot of people out there, I think, are trying to find the next best option. They don't want to, bet 3-1 or plus 350, and the 4-1s and plus 450s are all gone. And you know how it is. As an experienced handicapper, we typically don't land on the favorite, especially when they're 3-1. We're trying to find something else, value, what have you, a live underdog, if you will. So, all these guys at the top of the board that are 15, 14, 16, 20, 30-1, they're going to end up being popular almost no matter what, because, we're trying to find somebody other than Scotty. I personally really like Fleetwood as well, and I'm on him at 40-1. And I can tell you, you talked about the current form. He shot 64 there in Canada. I love that. You've seen what he's done recently in other signature events, major championships. He comes off of a third place finish at the Masters, his best ever finish at that tournament. And then you look at the U.S. Open itself. The U.S. Open has been the best major as far as results for Tommy Fleetwood. And you can also probably throw the British in there. I think he's had the equal amount of top 10 finishes at both the British Open and the U.S. Open. Now you take Pinehurst #2. I kind of isolated 3 different sets of skills that I think are most important here. Total driving, a combination of length and accuracy, iron play, strokes gained approach, and scrambling. Tommy Fleetwood, I believe, is 15th on tour in total driving. He's long enough and he's very accurate. I think he's 6th on tour in scrambling. Short game is immaculate, and he's a pretty darn good putter as well. And we know about his iron play. So Tommy checks those boxes for me. Also, Pinehurst #2. Very much of the game has to be played on the ground. The work around the greens, you have to be endlessly creative in figuring out ways to get up and down off of these shaved runoff areas and these domed shaped greens. And links style golf is very much of a game that's played on the ground. American golf is typically an aerial assault. You're coming in from as high as you can go, drop it on the green, birdie putt, move on. So if Pinehurst is a little bit of a combination of a British Open style and a U.S. Open style, then who better than Tommy Fleetwood, where those 2 majors have been his most successful?
I agree. Sunday, I get up early like I always do. I check my overnight numbers and I'm like, okay, Mr. Benson at the Circa, what do you got for me? And Scotty Scheffler, Sunday, going into the tournament, 4-shot lead over, I'm drawing a blank here.
It was Hadwin, Straka, and Morikawa, I believe.
Morikawa. Okay, 4-shot lead over Morikawa. I was looking for 6-shot lead over Xander Schauffele. So his Scotty to win was minus 420. Okay,
Yeah,
which I'm like, okay, now he's playing Jedi mind tricks in my mind. Okay, because this is the world number one. I know he's got Morikawa there 4 back, and he's got, Xander and a couple other Rory's and stuff. But I'm saying, okay, it's almost like you're rooting for people to jump on the minus 420 because that was way too short for me. So I asked him, and he goes, well, Jeff, to be honest with you, good eyes as usual. He says, we're the shortest in the market right now. So me being me, of course, I jumped on Morikawa plus 1050 or 1025, 4 shots back. And then Xander was 6 shots back plus 3350. I knew right away Xander wasn't there. But Morikawa, Scotty with an unfamiliar bogey, not the double or triple bogey. Morikawa knocking on the door, just not enough. What'd you see on Sunday?
I tell you, one thing I saw was Scotty Scheffler's incredible. Even with his B game, he's better than everybody else. And I also saw, and what I firmly believe, and I think I maybe even knew this before Sunday at the Memorial, it was earlier this season that Wyndham Clark was the biggest threat to Scotty. It's now clearly Colin Morikawa. Mm-hmm. He finishes runner-up to him at the Memorial. He was 9th at Harbour Town. He was 16th at the Wells Fargo. He was in the final group at the PGA Championship. I mean, Morikawa is right there. Also, the attitude. When he showed up at the Masters, he came in, he was not in good form. And he showed up and the short game was on fire. The putter, Morikawa has always been about driving accuracy and iron play. Well, then he added a short game. He showed up at Augusta and he could chip and putt. And you're like, wow. And he really in so much voiced that I am making a point to return back to, major championship contention. I haven't won a major in a while. He's got 2, by the way. But he seems bound and determined to get back to that level where he's the best and he's beating these guys on the biggest stages. And he seems more determined than anybody else in the world to me right now to catch Scotty. And I do believe he's the closest. So that's another takeaway I had. But I had a friend texting me and said, how can Scotty make a triple bogey on Saturday and a bogey on the final hole and these guys not catch him? And I said, because he's better than everybody else. And then he responded and said, I can't wait until next week when the live guys are in the field. And, can you imagine Koepka and Cam Smith and Rahm trying to catch him? And I said, yeah, it doesn't freaking matter. He'll blow those guys away too. He is the absolute best in the world. And there's no ifs, ands, or buts. You're watching. I don't know if he's the next Tiger because that's a bold statement. Tiger has decades of accomplishments. Scotty right now is on that path to being the next Tiger. And that's how good he's playing right now. And that's why nobody can catch him right now. If anybody can, he's going to have to slip for someone to catch him. I was also thinking about this last week. Maybe Morikawa. But I really think there's only 2 guys that can beat Scotty right now with their absolute A game. And that's Xander and Rory.
And I agree with that. On one of our simulators for the actual odds and the simulation odds, this came up at the PGA where Xander was the winner. It is Xander again. He's at about a 12%. And you're getting him at that 10-11 number. But it's comical because the Scotty's winning percentage chance is in double digits, and then Xander's at 9, and I think Collins at 8, and the rest of the field is 4 3s and below. So it's such now a course like this, we've seen the greens fast, and faster. We've seen if you come up short, it's going to roll off. Accuracy is going to be such a big part of it. The hardest thing of trying to beat Scotty is Scotty doesn't beat himself. He might have a bad hole. He's human. Okay, but he doesn't make enough mistakes. Where, as you said, we're going back to Tiger. And this used to, I used to roll my eyes and I despise this. Tiger wins by 9. Hey, Tiger, how'd you hit him? I really didn't have my A game today. I think about it. And I wanted to go and choke him. You just lapped the field. Well, and that's what it's going to take. Someone needs to play 72 holes with their A game to beat this guy right now.
I agree. And I think that's well said. Somebody needs to play 72 holes. There's, Xander did it, and it took Scotty getting arrested to beat him. But Xander had his A game pretty much for 72 holes. And if the arrest doesn't happen and Scotty goes along, he still finished 8th, by the way, did Scheffler. I mean, if he doesn't have that hiccup that week, maybe he wins that too. But Xander obviously was spot on that week. Rory was on fire in the final round at the Wells Fargo. But is it 72 holes of A game? And you make a good point there about Scotty, which I noticed, I think, going back to Bay Hill, which was the start of this run, where he won 5 times in his last 8 starts. That when he does make him, he rarely makes a bogey to begin with. When he does, he is number 1 on the PGA Tour in bounce back percentage, meaning he comes back with a birdie after a bogey more so than anybody else on the planet. So, yeah, it's like, okay, maybe we got him. He just slipped. Oh, no, he just came back with a birdie. He does that more often than anybody playing golf. So he's so tough. And Jeff, it's not only the talent and the game. I'm starting to see the mental toughness of Tiger as well. The comparisons to Tiger are growing. And I think the mental game is there as well. I think, to your point, when you talk about Tiger kind of being a little bit snobbish, if you will, or stuffed shirt about, oh yeah, I didn't quite hit, and I missed that one there. And you just want, Tiger wasn't necessarily likable earlier in his career. He didn't give you too much. He was short. He was curt. Scotty, I think, and for a while, Scotty was kind of vanilla. We didn't hear too much from him. He didn't necessarily lead on about too much. His game wasn't exciting. It was just fairways and greens and win. Ever since the arrest, it's almost been the best thing for him. He has been in the public spotlight more because of that. He's had to speak publicly. When he addressed the media about that arrest and what happened, he told us everything he possibly could, even with the preface up front that he couldn't really say too much legally. He gave us great information and then some, and did it with such class. And then does the eulogy for Grayson Murray with no script, off the cuff, and does that with more class. This guy is just showing that he's got so much talent, more, off the golf course, just as much as he has on it. The game plan, the mental fortitude, the attitude that he carries himself with. He's one tough cookie, man.
And I think the naysayers, he's not the flamboyant, again, it's not wearing the tiger red on Sunday, the fist pumps but you'll see some emotion out there, when he makes a key birdie or, a 15-footer for a save a par. And that number you were looking for, I want to say I saw it 2 weeks ago, bogey, and then the following hole, it's almost like at 48% that he was getting the birdie.
That's incredible.
There.
Think about that.
Yeah.
Half the time.
Yeah. So it is off the charts here. Lastly, before we jump in, Golf Channel, Tuesday night, maybe it was Monday or Tuesday, interviewing 3-4 of the live golfers. There was a tweet out there. I haven't been following as much as I should. Apologies. That it looks like there is going to be an agreement. Therefore, the Golf Channel was told to, hey, let's start interviewing a few of these guys. Obviously, John Rahm withdraws. And I had talked at length this week Yeah, the money's great in the bank account, but I bet you every morning he wakes up and looks in the mirror, the fire's gone, the belly's, he's just like hating life. So, any word or did you read about it? Is there an agreement getting close?
Yeah, and I can't remember the exact language of it, but there have been documents signed, an agreement in principle, whatever the legalese is on that stuff. I'm not sure. It's certainly a step in the right direction, but I've also seen a lot of comments that like, okay, so this means next year they'll sign the next paper, and next year they'll sign the next paper, and 5 years from now we might be finally merged. Yeah, there's maybe that possibility. But hey, at least there's some progress here. Again, hopefully it all happens sooner rather than later. I haven't really gotten in the weeds about what this agreement means, but again, it's progress. And again, hopefully it's next year. I don't know if it's going to happen that quick, but maybe the start of the 2026 season, we've got some sort of merger. I think that's somewhat realistic.
Pinehurst Resort and Country Club. Course evaluation. What do your eyes see?
Well, a tough golf course for sure. Actually, if you're a resort player, I've spoken with some people that have played this course many times, and it's kind of boring. It's flat. There's not a lot of elevation change. There's not a lot of water. There's not a lot of wow factor. It's just like this monster that's sitting there, and you got to slog through it. It's mentally and physically exhausting, and difficulty level off the charts. And, I talked to this one guy. He's like, I recommend people playing half a dozen other courses at the Pinehurst Resort, by the way, which there are 9 18-hole courses at Pinehurst. And it's just number 1, number 2, number 8, number 9, whatever it is. He said Pinehurst number 2 is kind of one of the most boring visually, but yeah, it's also a beast and probably the most difficult and certainly the most historic. When Michael Campbell won here, holding off Tiger by 2 shots, he won at even par. Payne Stewart won at 1 under par, holding off Mickelson in 1999. And then Martin Keimer out of nowhere wins by 8 shots. He was at 9 under par, but you look at everybody else that was behind him: Ricky Fowler, Keegan Bradley, Brooks Koepka, Jason Day. They were all at like -1 or even par. There was only, I want to say, 4 guys that were under par that year. And Keimer was a real outlier. And I remember getting so ticked off because I was not on him. And one of the reasons I wasn't on him is because he was awful. He was one of the worst guys in the PGA Tour for scrambling. I think the number was 158th, ranked 158th for scrambling that year, going into a course where you absolutely have to be a magician around the greens. He ends up putting everything, which we're going to see this week too. Everything that rolled off into those collection areas, Martin Keimer ends up putting and just laps the field. So the point is, though, the number that our boy Jeff Sherman at the Westgate Superbook put up this week is 275.5, which is 4 under par, 4.5 under par for a winning score. You want to go better than that or worse than that? I think that's a real good number. I think 5 under may be a little aggressive. I think 3 or 4 under. Yeah, I think a lot of guys would take that right now. The golf course has wide fairways. It has basically no rough. For the most part, in total, what you're going to see lining these fairways is basically either pine trees and pine straw, pine needles, or you're going to see these sandy waste areas that have these native grasses, these wire grass. It looks like a beach almost out there. It may be similar to what we saw at the PGA Championship a couple of years back when Mickelson won at Kiowa. It's got kind of that links-ish feel to it. And that's what we were talking about earlier with Tommy Fleetwood, being able to play on the ground and the sand and the way Mother Nature has kind of windswept this design into place. That's where it kind of brings in that link style combined with more of a US Open style as well. So the fairways are pretty wide, but they shouldn't be too difficult to hit. If you do miss the fairway, you're going to hope for a lucky bounce because, you could end up behind a pine tree, or you could end up in the pine straw and have a perfectly easy shot. You could end up in the sandy waste area and be fine, or end up with your ball in a tuft of wiregrass and be screwed. So if you miss the fairway, it's going to be the luck of the bounce. But the real skill is not only finding the fairway, but finding the right spots in the fairway. If you're not finding the right spot, you could end up with an uneven lie or a real difficult angle into the green. So for me, that equates to total driving. This is a long course, over 7,500 yards and only par 70. And for a frame of reference, that's about the same length as Jack's place last week, but that was par 72. So we're taking 2 shots away from you here and still about the same length golf course. So you've got to have some length. And then you also have to have some accuracy, not necessarily to find the fairway, but to find the right position in the fairway. Okay, now moving towards the green, you've got to be able to hit greens in regulation. It's one of the hardest courses we see of any to hit greens in regulation because of these, what they call turtleback or an upside down saucer, a dome shaped putting surface where balls are going to tend to roll off. Okay. So you have to be able to try and, hold that putting surface and hit greens in regulation, because if you don't, this is the third piece of the equation. It's going to roll off into these closely mown, shaved collection areas where you're going to have to be magical and finding a way to get up and down. And like I said, with Martin Keimer and a lot of guys probably this week, you're going to see him pull out the putter. You're going to see him hit 8 and 9 irons and bump it and bump and run it. You're going to see lob wedges. You're going to be sand wedges and bump and runs and lob shots and chips. And like I said, putts. And you're going to see hybrids and 3-woods. Guys are going to have to figure out a multiple number of different ways to get up and down around these crazy putting surfaces. One thing I've learned too with major championships, Jeff, it seems like, now that social media is so readily available and present, we see the classic US Open where the guy drops the ball into the rough and you can't see it because it's 6 inches deep. And oh my gosh, Pebble Beach is going to be a monster this week. And now this week we're seeing a guy drop a ball in the green. It rolls all the way across into a sand waste area. And oh my goodness, it's incredible out here. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but come on. It's not, I don't think this is not Shinnecock Part 2 where the greens are baked out and it's unplayable and it's diabolical. I believe the USGA has learned their lesson over the years. And if you've noticed, US Opens, I don't want to say they've gotten easier, but the winning scores have more been like 5 or 6 under par rather than even par or even 5 over par. I think they've kind of realized that there's a healthy balance there. And with the winning score proposition being right around, 4 or 5 under par, I think we're going to get obviously an extremely difficult test, but I don't think all the hype and circumstance you're seeing online is completely true. So, and because you really haven't heard the players complain, you haven't heard the players say, oh, it's crazy. No, it's just these guys on the internet, showing a ball on the green. Oh my gosh, this and that. So, what it boiled down to for me, in a nutshell here, total driving, length and accuracy off the tee, iron play, strokes gained approach, hit these greens in regulation, and scrambling. Be a magician around the green. And who better really checks all those boxes than the man, Scotty Scheffler?
2 questions before we get to the outrights. If I asked Jeff Sherman, and again, these are more for show. I'm Batman. I can't see anything. And he put a tweet up there. And of course, I tweeted him and says, hey, do you have your under over yet? And he's like, Jeff, it's the first prop up there. I'm like, oh, Jeff, I'm so sorry. 4.5, so 5. So if I said the winning score, what would you feel more comfortable with? The winning score being -5 or 6, or do you think there'll be more than 5 or 6 people under par when this is all said and done?
Oh, okay. So which do I prefer? How many people are under par or winning score?
Which is going to be more? The winning score under par or more guys under?
Wow. Oh man. I would probably say winning score. Well, gosh, that's really tough because the winning score could be 3 under. And if the winning score is 3 under, I think you'll probably get 3 or 4 guys under par. Okay. If the winning score is 5 under, I think there will be less guys under par, so that's a pretty tough one. I tell you, there is some disparity in the market. I mentioned Jeff Sherman at the Westgate, the Superbook, a very highly regarded sharp store. right there with Circa here in Las Vegas. And Sherman, I think one of the best golf odds makers in the world. He's set the number at 4.5. At DraftKings, the number is 5.5. So I believe the more recreational bettors, which tend to be more of the populace at DraftKings, are betting that the score is going to be lower, that they're going to go beyond 5, they're going to get to 6, because that's not uncommon, and it's not a knock on the recreational bettor. You know how it is. The recreational bettor wants to bet the yes and the over. They want fireworks, they want action. So therefore, they're betting that this score, somebody's going to light it up. Tiger's going to win, and he's going to shoot 8 under. But maybe the best bet, just reading the market and probably being patient at this point, is to let that number creep further down the board, and then bet that it's going to be higher than that they're going to score less, they're going to score worse than 5.5 or 6.5 under par. I think just from a market standpoint, that would be the way to bet that one.
And all the naysayers at the PGA, geez, I mean, a muni course, a pitch and putt. Look at this, going to reach 2020. And
that's a great point, Jeff, because they're betting on what they saw last when Xander went to 20 under par or whatever it is. Good point. Yeah,
exactly. And they'll be the ones bitching and moaning because there's only 3 or 4 people under par on this one. Lastly, you talked about around the greens. You talked about the pitching, the lobs. 2 names came to me, both not in form at all. And we talk about Jordan and the magical beans around the green. We talk about the flop shots and everything with lefty. No chance for either one of them, right?
I wouldn't rule out Spieth, and Mickelson's just a little bit interesting because he was second place. He was runner up here to Payne Stewart in 1999, but that's 25 years ago. So no, I don't think Mickelson has much of a chance. I mean, we said that when he won the PGA a few years ago, but I think this is a different beast. And again, I mean, can Phil Mickelson keep up with Scotty Scheffler and, these Colin Morikawa? No, I don't think so at all. The other thing about Kiowa, where he won, I think there was probably less guys in the field that year where that golf course was a good fit. I think the 2 best players in the world, in my opinion, Scotty Scheffler and Xander Schauffele, this particular course is an outstanding fit for them. So, yeah, that probably lessens the chances of a wild anomaly like a Mickelson or something. But Spieth, when there's such an emphasis on short game, you can almost never count him out. It's the iron play that's real tough. He's been great off the tee this year. His off the tee game is very good. But if he's missing too many greens in regulation, Jeff, and that short game is being called upon too much, then that will tend to grind on you, and you're going to miss a shot here and there, and that leads to an unraveling. It's kind of like putting. If you're putting the ball 40 feet away from the hole all day long, and your putting is lights out for a couple days, eventually that putter is going to run out of gas, and it's going to kind of come back to the mean. So, you've got to be driving it well. You've got to be hitting the irons well, and you can't have the short game carry you. You have to be firing on all cylinders. And if the short game, let's say, I think it was last week at the Memorial, Keegan Bradley, the first 2 days, was 5 under par and right there in the mix. But I saw a red flag when he was number 1 in the field in strokes gained putting. I said, uh-oh. And he was not very good off the tee and not very good with his iron play. I said, his putter's carrying him. He's living and dying by the putter, and eventually he died. He shot like 14 over par over the weekend or something like that. He shot 80 on Sunday. So if the rest of Spieth, if his iron play comes around for Jordan Spieth, then yeah, he could figure in the mix, but he can't be too reliant on one facet of the game, especially the short game, to manage to have success over the course of 72 holes.
All right, what everyone's waiting for, we got standing room only here. We got the outrights. The fairway is yours, my friend.
Well, we've talked about what I think is going to be most important on this golf course. I've looked at all the stats, par 4s in the range of 450 to 500 yards, approach play from 175 to 200 yards plus, bogey avoidance, strokes gained off the tee. This is a major championship. So it's not like where you can isolate a couple of skill sets and say, you know what, if you chip and putt well this week, you'll be fine. You have to do everything well because it's a major and it's a very difficult golf course on top of that. But the three areas I emphasize the most are what we talked about earlier: total driving, approach play, and scrambling. And the guys that I've landed on this week all check those boxes in spades. We talked about Tommy Fleetwood, and he is absolutely spot on in all those areas. The current form has been good. And I also kind of like that he seems to flourish at both US and British Opens, and we kind of have a combo course here. So I'm on Fleetwood for a top 20 finish as well as an outright. I'm on Ludwig Åberg for a top 20 finish and an outright. Tremendous driver of the golf ball, tremendous iron player, and a great scrambler and a great putter. And kind of the intangible that you also have for Åberg is experience here. Some people might not realize this, but in 2019, he participated in the U.S. Amateur, which started with 312 players. And then they whittle it all the way down to match play and eventually crown a champion. He got to the round of 32. So he goes from 300 plus down to 32. He played a lot of rounds at this course, knows how this golf course works. And I think that gives him an extra factor that we can add to, what he does as far as the metrics as well. And then also Collin Morikawa, who we touched on. I think right now the biggest threat to Scotty Scheffler. He's not the longest hitter of the golf ball, nor is Tommy Fleetwood, but they're pretty darn close to 300 yards. And that isn't exactly a short knocker. I think it's plenty long enough. And Morikawa proved at Valhalla that his distance was enough. He was in the final pairing on Sunday. And then the putter just went cold. We talked about the improvement of the putter and the scrambling for Morikawa. That's what's led to all these tremendous finishes for him at Augusta, at Valhalla, at Harbour Town, at the Memorial. So I'm on Collin at 20-1. He's down to 16 or 14. And, I think it's difficult. And we kind of touched on this earlier. It's hard to have a problem with the numbers this week because Scotty has just knocked the market out of kilter. And is 14-1 great value on Morikawa? Probably not. You're probably, 17 is probably about the right number. But if you're going to try and beat the favorite, you have to take it. And what else are you going to do? I have two other guys at triple digits. I have Alex Noren at 150-1. He's closer to 100 or 125 now. I got Jeffrey Benson off his game for a minute. I found Billy Horschel at 225-1 at Circa. And I said, boy, that's a crazy price. I just put some pizza money on him. But he's been quickly bet down to 150 or 125-1. So yeah, those guys are outlier shots. And I think, Morikawa, Fleetwood, Åberg, Noren, Horschel, those two guys, the last two guys I mentioned, Noren and Horschel, they also absolutely check the boxes of scrambling and ball striking and total driving. They also check the boxes of current form. Alex Noren, 9 top 25 finishes in his last 10 starts. Billy Horschel won at Corrales 2 months ago, just finished 15th at the Memorial, 8th at the PGA. These guys have been, on fire. But Jeff, it all comes down to Scheffler, and I'm on him too. And like I said, he's thrown the market out of whack. So, I think you just kind of have to take some guys at this point. And the numbers, it's hard to recommend in sports betting that you want to overpay for something. But again, it's a different beast this week. And I think 3-1 is overpaying for Scotty. That's not necessarily a bargain, but our mutual friend Matt Human said to me earlier today, it's better than laying minus 150 going into the weekend. I got Scotty at plus 450 right after the PGA. I got him at 4-1 as late as last Sunday before he ended up clinching victory there at the Memorial. And now the readdress or the re-release of the odds this week, plus 350, plus 325, 3-1. I've even seen plus 275. If you can't find a decent number on Scotty, maybe that's plus 350. then I recommend bet him for a top 5 finish, which I think you can find it better than -150, which is, I think, a very good bet. Maybe bet him for a top 10 where you're paying close to -250. I still think it's not a bad bet at all. But I went right to the top, Jeff, and I feel like, and there's even markets, I think this is very telling. There's markets out there now on who will finish second, outright without Scotty, first round leader without Scotty, this and that and the other without Scotty. I mean, how telling is that the odds makers are offering you these other markets? We've never really seen that before. This guy, like we touched on earlier, is approaching Tiger Woods territory. I was speaking with Jay Cornegay earlier in the week, and he remembers when Tiger Woods was less than 2-1 to win major championships, even money even. Scotty's approaching that territory, and I think not only in the betting markets and in the betting world that we live in, he's approaching Tiger in more ways than one. And I think he's going to win this week because nobody in the world can catch him on a golf course that's perfect for him. I think he's your winner. Fleetwood, Morikawa, and Oberg, I believe, are contenders. Noren and Horschel, I believe, are very good plays for a top 20 or a top 30 or a top 40. But I think Scheffler wins again for the 6th time in 9 starts.
And you have one head-to-head.
Yes, I do. And this one, I stayed away from any of the guys that I'm on outright or otherwise. I took Xander Schauffele over Rory McIlroy, and we've sung the praises of Xander here, not only obviously prior to the PGA, but even here today. I think he's the 2nd best player in the world. The reason I'm not on him for an outright is because I don't like the chances of going back-to-back winning a major championship. It's such a relief off of your shoulders to have won that first one. I don't really see him doing it back-to-back. Xander for a top 10, yeah, I don't think that's a bad bet at all. He's another guy that I think this course is perfect for. And that's why I kind of like him over Rory McIlroy. I laid -120. I've seen -130. I don't think that's an awful price either. I've said it a couple of times this week that I think with their A games, there's 2 guys, and we said it here earlier, Rory and Xander, that could possibly beat Scotty. But this golf course, I don't think is perfect for Rory's game. And I think it's more suited for Xander. That's why I'm going with Xander at a relatively short price over Rory McIlroy.
Well, we've had you working overtime. You have been swamped all week. I know you got other shows later today and then a beautiful vacation coming up. The scroll has been going the whole time. Get standing room only here. We can't thank you enough. They know to go to Twitter or X, whatever we're calling it today, at Las Vegas Golfer. But what I do always here is I have you close the show out, tell them where to find your written work and your schedule on the Sports Grid.
Yeah, an article I was really proud of with a lot of insights from bookmakers and bettors alike on kind of the power and the shift in the market that Scotty Scheffler has facilitated or energized, whatever adjective you want to use, been the catalyst for, certainly. That's up now at PGAtour.com under Golf Bet. The prop farm is what they call it. I thought that was a really good piece. At golf.com, I have, further explanation on all my outright plays. And of course, I'll be on Sports Grid later this evening, coming up at 7:15 Eastern, and then again at 11:45 Eastern, a late one tonight on the Grid with Gabe Morency and Cam Stewart and the crew.
Well, we can't thank you enough. I'm so excited. Make sure you have a great weekend, a Father's Day weekend. Enjoy your vacation. We have a signature event, you said, next week?
Yeah, we go to TPC River Highlands, a Pete Dye design, the Travelers Championship. And, I like Scotty to win this week. I have a feeling we might get a break from Mr. Scheffler, and he won't be in the field if he wins this week. We'll see. The guy obviously loves competition. He loves competition at the highest level, and he loves to beat his peers in this sport of golf. So who knows? Maybe he shows up, but a signature event indeed.
Thank you, everyone that showed up. Mr. Gaskill, congrats on their weekend championship on Saturday. Hats off there, Mr. Saylor, Mr. Berry, and everyone else was here. So from myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Invest, the one, the only Mr. Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golfer. We wish everyone a great evening. In about I don't know, 25 minutes. Scott Webb will debut his MLB show, talking tonight's market, what he likes, what his eye sees. And if you're bored tonight, 8:32 Eastern, I too will be on Sports Grid with Mr. Scott Wetzel and Mr. Dave Sharapan. We're going to be talking some NBA, Celtics, and maybe they'll ask me a few questions about Mr. Hurley and UConn. So everyone, have a great night and see you soon.